My name is Dante. I lived a happy life with my girlfriend until that fateful night changed everything. That evening, we were sitting on the sofa watching TV after dinner. Just as the movie was getting intense, I heard a very soft click. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought the sound came from the movie, but a few seconds later, it happened again, this time much louder, coming from the kitchen. I decided to go check it out. As soon as I stepped through the kitchen door, I froze. I was standing face to face with a man. He had pried open the back door to get inside. His presence was so sudden that I didn't even have time to react. We stared at each other for a few brief seconds. He was wearing a mask, and his eyes showed no emotion at all. Then, he raised a gun. Instinctively, I turned to run, and that was when the deafening cracks of gunfire tore through the air. But his first target wasn't me. I opened my eyes and felt no pain, but I saw a sight that shattered my heart. My girlfriend had collapsed on the sofa, and dark red blood was starting to spread everywhere. Her eyes were wide open, shocked and empty. More shots rang out, this time aimed directly at me. A massive force slammed into my head. My vision shattered into a million tiny pieces, and then everything drowned in a thick, suffocating ringing sound. I fell to the floor. In my delirious state, I saw him walk toward me and slowly pull down his mask. His mouth was mumbling something, but I couldn't hear a word. The moment he walked away was the moment I slipped completely into the darkness. The time that followed was a complete blur. I lay there, sometimes feeling the sharp sting of pain, sometimes fading back into unconsciousness. The police didn't arrive until 2 days later. My father noticed we hadn't shown up for our scheduled dinner and weren't answering our phones, so he asked for a welfare check. They kicked the door down and found me barely clinging to life on the floor, my face disfigured by the wound and dried blood. My girlfriend was still on the sofa, but she was long gone. The bullet hadn't killed me instantly. It had grazed my skull, but it still caused a traumatic brain injury. When I finally woke up in the hospital, I tried my best to answer every question the police asked. They asked me about the intruder. I described everything I could remember in my state of panic and trauma. Based on my testimony and existing criminal records, they quickly identified a suspect. He was a man with a long history of violent crimes whose physical appearance matched the description I gave. The police showed me a photo for identification. It only took a few seconds for me to recognize him and state with absolute certainty that he was the one. I wanted the killer to pay for what he did immediately, and the face in that photo seemed to fit my fractured memories perfectly. That man was quickly arrested, put on trial, and sentenced to 20 years for armed robbery and attempted murder. While all of this was happening, I still hadn't fully recovered. I didn't attend the trial, and I didn't follow the details of the case. In the years that followed, I lived in constant torment. I had headaches almost every day, sometimes so intense that I couldn't focus on anything. And in my nightmares, his face kept coming back. At first it was blurry, but as the years passed and my brain injury stabilized, the pieces of the puzzle began to rearrange themselves. Then, one morning nearly 20 years later, I stopped at a local convenience store. As I was standing in line to pay, a man walked in. When he passed by me, he was close enough for me to see his face clearly. Immediately, a chill ran through my entire body. I turned around to look at him again. His face was marked by a long, prominent scar that ran across his forehead and down the middle of his face. That single detail woke up my memory completely. I remembered everything. In those final seconds before I lost consciousness, when the killer leaned in close to look at me, I had seen that scar. It was the most real, vivid detail of the night. But because of the brain trauma, I had completely forgotten it when I talked to the police. I realized with horror that I had provided the wrong information. The man who had been in prison all this time had been misidentified because he looked so much like the killer, except he didn't have a scar. An innocent man had been locked away, while the person who actually killed my girlfriend was still walking free. From that day on, my headaches became much worse. I started doing research and felt my world fall apart when I learned that the man convicted years ago was about to be released after serving his full sentence. I don't know what to do. If I speak up now, I have to admit that my false certainty destroyed a human being's life. But if I stay silent, I am helping the real killer stay free. He is still out there, living his life after the horrific things he did to me and the woman I loved. My name is Martha. Most of my day is spent sitting by my window, busy with my work as a content creator. I live in a remote suburb where the houses are separated by large yards and gardens. This isolated lifestyle accidentally made me the only witness to a dark and hidden story. Right across from my place is a house belonging to a young couple who moved in less than a year ago. The wife's name was Orla. I learned her name from the casual encounters we had when she came outside to check the mail or water her plants. Our conversations weren't long, but they were enough for me to grow fond of her. Orla was the perfect image of a homemaker. She was always neat, tidy, and soft-spoken. But behind that exterior, I slowly began to realize she wasn't happy. In contrast to Orla's gentle nature, her husband always had a dark and gloomy presence. I never actually spoke to him because the opportunity never came up. He didn't talk to anyone or care about his neighbors. His presence felt like an invisible weight pressing down on that house. Through our chats, even though Orla never said it directly, I understood that her husband was extremely controlling and irrationally jealous. He wouldn't let her go into town or meet with friends, especially men. Once, I noticed bruises on her wrists. When she saw me looking, she just smiled and looked away. There wasn't much I could do except act normal and be a good listener. About 2 weeks before the tragedy happened, Orla suddenly changed. She seemed much happier. The constant look of worry in her eyes was gone. When she talked to me, her smile felt natural and relaxed. I thought that maybe the tension in her marriage had finally started to ease up. Then came that fateful night. I was tossing and turning, unable to sleep, so I went to the window to get some fresh air. The street was drowned in silent darkness until I spotted a figure moving stealthily along the side of Orla's house. The person stayed low, checked the surroundings carefully, and then slipped through a side door with practiced ease. The way they moved immediately made me think of a professional burglar. Just as I turned to grab my phone, I froze. 2 gunshots rang out in a row, tearing through the quiet night. My heart hammered against my ribs as my shaking fingers dialed 911. Just as the dispatcher picked up, a 3rd shot went off. The police arrived within minutes. They broke down the door and rushed inside. Orla's house was quickly cordoned off, and I knew right then that something terrible had happened. The next morning, the official news was released. A home invasion gone wrong. According to the police, a stranger had broken in with the intent to kill the couple. During the struggle, Orla was shot and killed, and the husband managed to shoot and kill the intruder on the spot. The husband had been hit by a bullet as well, but his injuries weren't life-threatening. With the intruder dead and the evidence at the scene seemingly clear, the case was closed quickly. 3 days later, Orla's funeral was held in a heavy, somber atmosphere. I attended, my heart full of sympathy. Orla's husband stood by the casket, uncontrollably. Everyone there felt his pain. When the service ended and people began to drift away, I lingered in the back. That's when I witnessed a moment that turned my blood to ice. Orla's husband was still standing over his wife's casket, but his face had completely transformed. The look of agony was gone, replaced by a cold, wicked smirk. He leaned down, stared into the casket for a second, and then spat on it. I stood there, paralyzed. In that moment, all the pieces in my head clicked together. I remembered Orla's sudden change in mood 2 weeks prior, and those 3 gunshots that night. I don't know exactly what happened inside that house, but I suspect those 3 shots weren't the result of a simple break-in. The only survivor was likely the one who orchestrated the whole thing. I keep this story to myself because it's all just my own theory, and I have no proof. I go on with my work, watching from my window every day as Orla's husband walks in and out of that house, looking like a lonely, grieving man.
My name is Sarah. I've been living alone in my new apartment for 3 weeks now, ever since my divorce was finalized. This complex has great security, so I felt safe starting my life over as a single woman. Work hasn't been going well lately, and the stress has been crushing, which has led to a lot of restless nights. But that insomnia was exactly how I first noticed something was wrong. It started when I woke up in the middle of the night. I went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water, and I was shocked to find the front door unlocked. I figured I was just being scatterbrained because of the stress, so I brushed it off. Then, my sleep grew even more fitful. Every time I woke up, the door was unlocked again. It made no sense. I am a creature of habit. I always lock the door and even double-check the handle before I go to bed. At first, I kept blaming the pressure and the lack of sleep, but things took a dark turn when my small belongings started to vanish. First, it was a bottle of nail polish, then my hairbrush, then an old photo I kept in a drawer, followed by my razor, and eventually, my underwear. A thick sense of dread settled over me. This wasn't just my imagination anymore. My life was being violated. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want people to think I was becoming paranoid, but I couldn't live like this. I bought a small hidden camera and tucked it under the sofa cushions in the living room, pointing it directly at the front door. I kept my routine exactly the same. When I got home late one night, I locked the door carefully. I even stood there for a few seconds to burn the memory into my brain so I wouldn't doubt myself later. Then, I went to my room and crashed immediately from exhaustion. I don't know how much time passed, but I woke up again, right on schedule. After a few seconds of clearing my head, my heart began to race. I crept toward the living room. I looked at the front door. It was open. It wasn't wide open, just cracked enough for a person to slip through. I lunged for the hidden camera. My hands were shaking as I opened the app and rewound the footage. Everything looked normal at first. The silence of the empty room on screen felt suffocating. Then, at 3:28 a.m., the door handle turned. I held my breath as the door swung open and a shadow slipped inside. He moved with total confidence. I zoomed in on the image, my eyes glued to the screen. He was wearing a hat and dark clothes. The moment I got a good look at his face, my blood ran cold. It was the building's maintenance man. I had seen him a few times in the hallway. In the video, he walked through my apartment like he owned it. He stopped in the living room, looked around, and sat down right where the camera was hidden. My heart nearly stopped. But he didn't find it. He sat there for a few seconds, then stood up and kept walking. He headed toward the bedroom. And then, he disappeared from the frame. I panicked and called 911 immediately. My voice was trembling and I couldn't stop shaking. I told the dispatcher everything while I stared at the screen. The police arrived quickly. They searched the apartment, took my statement, and watched the video. They told me they would contact management to investigate. After the police left, I lay in bed and tried to force myself to sleep. But my mind was spiraling, haunted by the feeling that my private space had been invaded. I opened the video app one more time. Suddenly, I sat bolt upright as a detail hit me. I never saw him leave. I watched the footage over and over, watching every second. The camera angle was a bit limited, but the front door was always in view. There was no way he could have walked out without being recorded. My heart hammered against my ribs. The air in the room felt thick. I scanned my bedroom, the closet, the bathroom, my desk. Everything was silent. My breathing was heavy. I couldn't stay there for another second. I had to get out of the apartment right now. But the very moment I swung my feet off the bed to the wooden floor, I felt a warm, steady breath blow directly onto my ankle. It was a slow, rhythmic pulse of air. My entire body froze. I didn't dare move a single millimeter. The distance between me and whatever was under the bed was practically nothing. That sensation was more horrifying than watching him break in. He was right there, and he had been there the entire time I was sleeping. Not just tonight, but all those other nights too. Thank you for watching until the end. As mentioned earlier, our goal of reaching 50,000 subscribers in 2026 is still ongoing. If you enjoy these stories, please give us a hand and support us.